In 2026, there are a lot of phones you can buy if you want to use your phone less. BlackBerry lookalikes with e-paper screens, smartphones with side switches to toggle temporary temperance, and full-on dumb phones for the fancy, the frugal, and most tiers in between. But in that entire maelstrom of mobile monasticism, there isn't anything quite like this. A de-Googled smartphone in the body of a mid-aughts feature phone with a 20-teens twist. A modular keypad that you can hot swap for an iPod-like scroll wheel, a gamepad controller, or a blast-from-the-past keyboard. I'm MrMobile, and I've spent the past few months sussing out the Sidephone. If you watch my Gadget Grab Bag series, and please do, because frankly it could use the help, then you got an early look at the Sidephone SP01 back in March. Aesthetically, it feels like the offspring of an affair between a 2006 Sony Ericsson and an Apple TV remote. A candybar topped by a tiny 2.8-inch touchscreen, below which sits a bay for the tiles I'll talk about in a sec. The enclosure is polycarbonate, which keeps the mass down to a pocket-friendly 120 grams, and I'm sure it also helped Sidephone simplify the antenna design. But it brings back bad memories of the days before metal chassis. The plastic holds onto oil from your skin and whatever else it picks up, and after a while, you start to wonder if you should add wet naps to your daily carry. Sidephone does offer silicone cases at $10 a pop to add some grip, though I wasn't impressed with the ones that came with my Founders Edition back in the spring. When I popped my personal SIM into the side of the Sidephone, the basics just worked. The phone lit up with 4G cellular service right away, and in the concrete bunker of a coffee shop where my T-Mobile signal doesn't quite reach, the phone's Wi-Fi kept me connected just as well. For voice calls, there's both speakerphone and Bluetooth, or you can just put the thing up to your ear, but you'll want to remember to lock the screen first, because there's no proximity sensor to do it for you. Similarly, when you want to unlock the phone, there's no fingerprint reader either. You need to pop in your PIN every time. You can do that using one of several available keyboards that come in the form of tiles. Easily my favorite feature here. That's because I'm part of the generation of mobile tech mavens that came up believing that the future of phones might be modular. From concept designs like the Puzzle Phone or Google's Project Aura, to products that actually shipped, like the Essential Phone, LG G5, and Moto Z, this notion of components that you could swap at will to change the capabilities of your mobile device just kept surfacing and resurfacing in the 20-teens. Of course, it ultimately fizzled in terms of the mass market, but how does it work for a niche digital detox device like this? Well, when I bought my Sidephone, it came bundled with a simple numpad that I knew right away wasn't going to work for me. And not that I don't have T9 skills. I got my first phone in 2001, so you challenge me to a text off at your own peril. But without letter labeling on the keys, it was just more of a challenge than I wanted. So I dropped another $29 on the QWERTY tile, which takes inspiration from the old BlackBerry Shore-type keyboards and is named after Jake at Returning Retro, who lobbied heavily for Sidephone to adapt it. The way this works is there are 2 letters per key, and you've got a choice between multi-tap and predictive text when it comes to typing your messages, which is surprisingly accurate and is accompanied by a clickiness that I, of course, find delightful. I snagged the Sundial tile too, also $29, which mutates Sidephone into the very model of a modern major MP3 player. While you cannot spin it like an iPod wheel, unfortunately, it does have some hidden keys on the corners, so there's more utility here than it might otherwise seem. And whichever tiles you choose, they're hot swappable, meaning you can slap them off and on again at will without tools or even powering down the phone. The buttons are all assignable thanks to Keymapper, and remember that the display, too, is a touchscreen with its own tiny little AOSP keyboard available, so you're not confined to the tiles for text input. I've seen some users in the Sidephone subreddit who've kept the numpad on there just as a kind of physical app launcher. Press 5 to open WhatsApp or whatever, which is a good example of how the target customer here is someone who thinks outside the box. I like that. I'm impressed by how quickly Sidephone has iterated on these, especially considering the small size of the company. Just 2 full-time founders based in Toronto and New York, supported by a team of contractors. In the past 4 months, 2 new tiles have already hit the store, both of which the company sent me pre-production samples of to preview. There's the classic keypad that adds letter labeling, and also a D-pad to give you a break from stretching your thumb all the way up to the screen to fight with swipes that don't always register. Now, it doesn't work in all apps, since, developers haven't had to accommodate a 4-way navigation key in over a decade. But it's still convenient when it does work, and honestly, it just feels right on this hardware. And there's also a new mini controller that adds a 10-key gamepad to the mix.
Now it's official.
I wasn't able to try any games with it yet, but going thumbs on with it gave me the same nostalgic thrill I got from some of those consoles I tested in the last video. Now, it might seem a little out of place on a device meant to keep people focused and reduce distractions, but Sidephone tells me its philosophy is that distraction-free doesn't have to mean boring. I agree. I also got a look at a pre-production tile meant to correct one of the biggest letdowns of the current crop, the lack of backlighting. This one is finished in a glow-in-the-dark paint, which isn't as good as a proper LED, but it does keep the cost and complexity down. Oh, and it's made of a soft-touch material that isn't quite as clicky, just in case you're not as big a fan of key clickiness as I am. Like all phones trying to sell you a healthier relationship to technology, the Sidephone is limited. In some ways, that's intentional and beneficial. This screen is simply too small to make scrolling socials enjoyable, and out of the box, you can't easily install TikTok or Instagram anyway. While this is Android 12 at its core, it's AOSP, with none of the hooks Google demands to grant you easy access to its 1.8 million apps. Initially, I chafed at this limitation and decided to defy the Sidephone's nature. Using the same approach I'd used to add Google services to Huawei phones in the past, I decided to load all the stand-in services and frameworks and architecture needed to convert the Sidephone into a tiny, full Android smartphone. But almost immediately, I found myself staring down one of many pop-ups, courtesy of some adware that came along for the side-loading ride. Skill issue, probably, but as I get older, I find I'm just more wary of getting elbow-deep in dodgy corners of the internet to force Google onto a product that wasn't designed for it. So, I went back to basics. I factory reset the phone and limited myself to just the apps listed on Sidephone's website. This works really well. You just scan a QR code from the app library and the phone will fetch open-source free apps from F-Droid over the air. And I got a little reminder of the joy of constraints. Having neither Spotify nor any music to sideload, I had to rely on the Transistor app to stream radio stations, leading to new discoveries like the eclectic KMSU out of Minnesota. No, they didn't pay for that placement. It's just darn good radio there. When I heard music out and about that I wanted to identify, Audial, however you pronounce it was a good Shazam in a pinch. Breezy Weather was better than most forecasting apps that come preloaded on Android devices by their OEMs. I could have had email, but I didn't want it. Most of my contacts are on Telegram, which is supported alongside Signal and WhatsApp. I had Firefox for browsing, but it was too tiny to want to surf much, which is of course the point. And in a pinch, I could even have used the Uber app to call a car. But you will inevitably butt up against other limitations of carrying a phone like this in 2026. Sometimes you're going to need to call Lyft instead of Uber, or send a message on Facebook because it's the only messenger your great-uncle uses, or use an authenticator to get into your work email, or something that relies on Google services. When I ran into these problems during my 2 weeks on the Lite phone last year, there was a built-in escape hatch. That phone had 5G, which meant I could tether my laptop or iPad to do what I needed to do. Sidephone is stuck on 4G, which, combined with its lack of certain bands for US carriers, makes it a suboptimal hotspot. There's no NFC, so no mobile payments or transit passes. You can't expand the onboard storage, pretty paltry at 64 gigs. And the camera is a 13-megapixel Samsung job that's, fine. So where does that leave us? Well, whether you consider an alternative phone a success depends entirely on what kind of digital detox you're looking for. In my opinion, the casual disconnector will likely be better served by something simpler and cheaper, like the dumbphone 2. Although, to be clear, I have not reviewed that device yet. There are just a lot of cheap flip phones in that class. On the other side of the coin, if money is no object, well, then the Lightphone 3 is the most striking smartphone alternative out there. I still miss this hardware very often. But I think Sidephone has succeeded in carving out a new subcategory. You're not likely to fall into a TikTok vortex with it, even if you sideload, because the screen is just too small. And the restraint inherent in the design also results in battery life that, for me, has been measured in days. At the same time, it's not so handcuffed that you'll be flagging down yellow cabs at 3 a.m. or telling people to text a temporary phone number. It's got just enough apps. And if you really need a specific one, well, you can get it on there. Sidephone, to me, feels like something made for the tinkerer class of consumer. You need to have the patience to relearn typing or to remap buttons, to coax apps into cooperating with keystrokes they were never programmed for. And you need to be open to the idea of modifying your phone with modules you carry around like so many collectible cards. If that sounds like you, the price of entry is $299 at Sidephone's site. And for that exact type of person, I think it's a fair price for something that truly exists nowhere else. Especially if you're planning to use it as a sometimes device rather than a full-time phone replacement. I mean, it's right there in the name. And I look forward to seeing more from Sidephone, whichever direction of the digital divide the company decides to explore next. This video was produced following several months with a Founders Edition Sidephone SP01 purchased by MrMobile and a mix of tiles, either bought or borrowed from Sidephone. No manufacturer ever gets copy approval or editorial input into the reviews of products MrMobile covers, and I received no compensation in exchange for this video. Hey, check out my Lightphone 3 review from last year for a deeper dive into my own digital detox experiment. And subscribe to the channel for a closer look at the dumbphone 2 coming up either in a full video or the gadget grab bag. Until next time, from Michael Fisher, thanks for watching, and stay mobile, my friends.